My friends laughed when I said I was going to quit my job and start a company. 6 months later, I closed a deal worth $10 million. At our reunion, they couldn't believe what I had achieved. You know that feeling when everyone around you tells you you're crazy? When your dreams seem so far out of reach that even you start to question if they'll ever come true? That was me just 6 months ago. I was stuck in a job I hated, talking about quitting to start my own business, and all my friends could do was laugh. "You're never going to make it," they said. Well, here I am, 6 months later, just having closed a $10 million deal. And trust me, when they found out, they couldn't believe their eyes. Let me take you back a little bit. My name's Mark, and I'm 27. I had what most people would consider a good job, a decent salary, benefits, a secure future. I worked as an accountant in a small firm. On the outside, my life looked pretty good. I had a routine, a paycheck, and a stable position. But inside, I felt suffocated, like I was meant for something bigger, something more meaningful than just pushing numbers around for someone else's dream. I had this burning fire inside of me that I just couldn't ignore anymore. You know, it's easy to convince yourself that this is what life is about, right? You wake up, go to work, follow the routine, collect the paycheck. It's safe. It's predictable. But that's the thing. I wasn't looking for safe. I wasn't looking for predictable. I was looking for something that would make me feel alive. Something that would make me excited to wake up every morning. Something that didn't just fill my bank account, but fulfilled my soul. The only problem was, nobody around me believed in it. That's where my friends came in. Chris, Alex, and Ryan. They were the kind of guys I could always count on. We'd been through everything together, shared laughs, heartbreaks, and all the ups and downs of life. But when I started talking about leaving my job and starting my own business, I could feel their disbelief. It wasn't just that they didn't think I could do it, it was the way they dismissed it so casually, like it was a joke. Chris, especially, was the one who didn't hold back. He'd always been the realist in our group, and he didn't waste a second, making sure I knew just how crazy my idea sounded. "Mark, man, you're throwing away everything you've worked for. You've got a good thing going here. Do you really think you're going to be some big entrepreneur?" He laughed as if the very idea of me becoming successful was preposterous, and that stung. Then there was Alex. He didn't say much, but his doubt was just as loud. He'd tell me things like, "Starting a business is risky, Mark. You don't even know what you're getting into. You've got it good right now. Why mess with it?" Alex wasn't trying to be mean. He just didn't get it. He didn't get the hunger inside of me. He didn't see that I wasn't happy living someone else's dream while mine was gathering dust in the back of my mind. And Ryan? Ryan was the quiet one. He'd listen to me talk about my dreams, but he'd never really respond. He'd change the subject or offer vague encouragement, but I could tell he wasn't fully behind it. I remember one night after I told them all about my plans, Ryan gave me a half-hearted smile and said, "If you think you can do it, go for it, man. But don't be surprised if it doesn't work out." That was it. Just a shrug, like it was all one big gamble. It hurt. It really did. To hear the people I trusted, the ones who had my back through thick and thin, doubt me like that, it cut deeper than I'd like to admit. But you know what? With every single doubt they threw at me, something inside me shifted. It made me more determined, more hungry. If they didn't believe in me, that was their problem, not mine. I realized something important that night. If I didn't go for it, if I didn't take that risk, I would spend the rest of my life regretting it. The truth was, I was already living with regret every single day. I was staring at my future and seeing a life where I was just another guy who played it safe, just another guy who never took a chance on himself. That terrified me more than anything. So I made a choice. I had to quit. I had to take that leap, no matter what anyone said. Let me tell you, deciding to quit my job wasn't easy. It wasn't some impulsive decision I made overnight. I'd been battling with myself for months. Every day, I'd sit at my desk, staring at my computer, wondering if this was it, if this was all I was ever going to be. The doubt started to eat away at me, like a slow burn. I had the security of a paycheck, the comfort of knowing where my next meal was coming from, and the peace of mind that I wouldn't have to risk everything. But at what cost? I remember this one afternoon, sitting in a meeting with my boss and my colleagues. They were all discussing the same monotonous tasks we did every day, the same budget reports, the same end-of-month calculations. I zoned out for a moment, just staring at my notepad, the numbers blurring together. I thought to myself, is this really it? Is this all I'm capable of? The tension in my chest grew with every word that was said around me. I was suffocating in this office, surrounded by people who didn't care, doing work that didn't matter to me. But then there was the flip side, the side I didn't want to acknowledge, the fear of failure. What if I left this steady job, the one everyone else said I was lucky to have, and I crashed and burned? What if I lost everything I had built so far? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the fear of failing was the reason I wasn't living the life I wanted. It wasn't the job that was holding me back, it was the fear. And fear is a hell of a thing. It keeps you stuck in a cycle, always wondering what if, never daring to break free. But every time I looked at my friends, and every time they laughed at my ideas or told me it wasn't going to work, it stung a little more. And every time they doubted me, it pushed me a little further into that uncomfortable space, where I knew I had to choose, stay in my safe life, or take the risk and chase my dream. It wasn't just Chris, Alex, and Ryan either, it was the whole world around me. People told me it was reckless, that I was throwing away my future, that it was a stupid idea to leave a well-paying job with benefits to start something from scratch. Why risk it all, Mark? You've got a good life already, they'd say. It was a steady stream of doubt from everyone, even strangers. People just don't get it. They don't understand what it's like to feel like your soul is slowly dying inside because you're stuck in a place that doesn't let you grow. I could feel it pulling me in different directions. Part of me wanted to listen to them. The part of me that feared failure, that didn't want to disappoint anyone, that was used to playing it safe. But the other part of me, the part that had been quiet for so long, was starting to scream. It was telling me to go for it, to stop listening to everyone who thought they knew better than me. And that part of me felt like a fire. It was the only thing that kept me up at night, the only thing that made me excited about the future. I could feel the weight of the decision settling in. It was no longer just about quitting my job. It was about what came next. It was about the unknown. And the thought of that unknown, of building something of my own, kept me up every night, tossing and turning, trying to find the courage to take that leap. But there was one moment that stuck with me. One moment that made everything click. It was a conversation I had with my mom. I don't know why I called her. Maybe I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't throwing everything away for nothing. I told her about my plans, how I was thinking about leaving my job, how I was going to start a business from the ground up. She paused just for a second before saying, "Mark, I've never seen you this passionate about anything. If you feel it in your heart, you have to go for it. You can't spend your whole life wondering, what if?" And in that moment, something inside me shifted. My mom didn't have all the answers, but she had something more powerful. Belief. Her belief gave me the strength to push through. And that's when I knew what I had to do. The next day, I walked into my boss's office, looked him straight in the eye, and handed in my resignation letter. I didn't look back. It felt terrifying and liberating all at once. There was no safety net anymore. I was about to plunge into the unknown, and I didn't know if I'd sink or swim. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never forgive myself if I didn't try. And that was the turning point. That was the moment I decided that no matter how hard it got, no matter how many people doubted me, I would push forward and make it happen. The moment I handed in my resignation letter, it felt like I was stepping off a cliff. There was a rush of adrenaline, a deep breath, and then a terrifying stillness. I remember walking out of that office with a sense of both excitement and complete fear. It was one of the scariest things I've ever done. I just walked away from a life of comfort, security, and a steady paycheck, all to follow a dream that had started as just a whisper in my mind and now felt like a roaring fire. But once I made that decision, There was no turning back. It was like this huge weight was lifted off my shoulders, but at the same time, I felt more pressure than I'd ever felt in my life. I'd burned the bridge to the old me, the guy who played it safe, the guy who followed the rules. Now I had to prove to myself and everyone who doubted me that I could do this. I remember the first night after I quit my job. I sat in my small apartment, staring at my laptop. My plan was far from perfect, but I had the idea, and that was more than I had before. I started working on the details of the business, what I'd sell, how I'd market it, and who I'd target. I didn't know if I had all the answers, but I knew I had to start somewhere. I spent days researching, reading everything I could find about building a business, reaching out to people who had been where I was. There were a lot of late nights, long hours, and moments of doubt where I thought maybe I was in over my head. But each time the doubt crept in, I reminded myself that this was the path I had chosen, and if I was going to fail, at least I'd fail trying. One of the hardest things was the loneliness. I went from having coworkers, people around me every day, to working alone in my apartment. Sure, I had my friends, but they weren't exactly supportive. Every time I spoke to them, I could hear the doubt in their voices. It wasn't that they didn't care, it was that they didn't understand. They didn't see what I saw in this dream. But as the days turned into weeks, something started to change. The business began to take shape. I made my first sale. Nothing huge, but it was a start. That first sale felt like a victory, like a sign that maybe I wasn't as crazy as everyone thought. Slowly, things began to fall into place, and as the business grew, so did my confidence. But then came the hardest part, the first big pitch. I was terrified. The fear of rejection, of failing in front of someone who could actually change everything, weighed on me. I spent days preparing for it, practicing my pitch in front of the mirror, refining every detail. I knew that this one meeting could make or break everything. The day of the pitch arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. My hands were shaking as I walked into the meeting room. I'd prepared every number, every fact, every angle, and yet none of that mattered more than my belief in the idea itself. I had to convince them not just of the numbers, but of my vision. I stood in front of the investors, trying to calm my racing heart, and I pitched my business with everything I had. My voice was steady, but inside I was screaming. As I finished, there was a long silence. My stomach dropped, and for a moment I thought I had lost them. But then one of the investors looked up at me and said, "You've got something here. We're in." And just like that, I secured a deal that changed everything. That one deal gave me the momentum I needed to grow the business, to hire employees, to expand. The fear, the uncertainty, the nights where I doubted myself, all of it started to feel worth it. But none of that mattered as much as the next moment. The moment I walked into that reunion with my friends. I had made it. The person who was once just the guy with big dreams was now someone who had achieved something. I didn't need to say anything at first. I could see it in their faces, the shock, the disbelief. They didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to react, and that, in a way, was the sweetest part of it all. The day I closed that $10 million deal felt like the entire world had shifted beneath me. I still remember the moment I signed the contract. It was surreal. I looked at the paper, the numbers on it, $10 million, and for a second I thought I might be dreaming. I wasn't sure how I got here, but in that moment, all the doubts, all the struggles, all the sleepless nights, it all made sense. Everything I'd worked for, everything I had sacrificed, was finally paying off. I remember walking out of that meeting, still holding the signed contract, feeling like I was floating. It didn't hit me all at once. It wasn't until I sat down in my car, staring at the contract in my hands, that I allowed myself to really feel it. I'd done it. I'd turned my crazy dream into reality. I was no longer just talking about success, I was living it. But there was still one thing left to do, one thing that would make everything come full circle. The reunion. When I walked into the bar that night, I could feel the eyes of my friends on me immediately. Chris, Alex, and Ryan were sitting at the same old booth we'd all sat in so many times before. Their faces lit up when they saw me, but I could tell right away that something was different. The usual laughter, the inside jokes, all of it was gone. It wasn't the same. I could feel their questions in the air before they even said a word. Chris, the first to speak, slapped me on the back and grinned. "Man, look at you. You look different." But there was something behind his words, something almost uncertain, like he wasn't sure whether to be proud of me or to keep doubting. I smiled and sat down, trying to act like everything was normal. But it wasn't, not anymore. We started talking about the usual stuff, sports, life, but there was this odd tension that lingered. And then, I couldn't take it anymore. I dropped the bombshell. "I closed a deal," I said casually, like it was no big deal. $10 million. The table went silent. Complete silence. Chris blinked, then looked at me like he'd just heard a ghost. Alex was the first to speak. "Wait, what?" I repeated myself, this time a little louder. $10 million. The business is finally taking off. I watched their faces change. Their disbelief was almost palpable. Their eyes darted from me to each other like they were waiting for someone to laugh and say it was just a joke. But no one did. They were frozen, processing the words. They couldn't believe it. Ryan, who had been quiet through most of the conversation, finally spoke up. "You really did it, didn't you?" His voice was soft, almost as if he couldn't believe it himself. The surprise in his voice was the most telling. He had never been the most supportive, but seeing him acknowledge it, seeing him actually believe that I had made it, felt like the sweetest victory of all. And then, for the first time in the entire night, Chris laughed. But it wasn't the mocking laugh I had expected. It was different. It was genuine. "Damn, man, I didn't think you had it in you. I guess I owe you an apology." Alex looked at me, and there was a mix of admiration and disbelief in his eyes. "I didn't think it was possible, but you really pulled it off. I'm proud of you, Mark." And for the first time, I could see it, that glimmer of respect, that moment when your friends, the ones who once doubted you, finally realize you weren't just talking big. You were doing it. It was in that moment, surrounded by the people who had been with me through everything, that I realized how far I'd come. They weren't the ones who had to believe in me at first. That was on me. But seeing their reaction, knowing they saw me not as a dreamer anymore, but as someone who had achieved something real, that was the moment that made it all worth it. I didn't need to rub it in their faces. I didn't need to say, "I told you so." The look in their eyes was enough. The fact that they couldn't deny it anymore, that I had proved them wrong, and more importantly, proved myself right, was everything. As we sat there, talking about the future, laughing about old memories, I couldn't help but think back to all the moments where I almost gave up. The times when I thought maybe they were right. But I kept pushing. I kept believing in myself when nobody else did. And now it was all coming together. As the night continued, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led me here. The doubts, the late nights, the fear that kept me up at night wondering if I was making a huge mistake. It was all worth it. Not just for the $10 million deal, but for the lesson I learned along the way. The lesson that it's never about the destination. It's about the journey. I had spent so much time worrying about failing. I let the opinions of others hold me back for longer than I should have. The truth is, it wasn't the risk of failure that was scary. It was the thought of never trying at all. The fear of living my whole life asking myself, what if? That was what I had to overcome. And when I finally did, everything changed. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need Chris's joke or Alex's skepticism. I didn't need Ryan's quiet disapproval. All I needed was to believe in myself. Once I made that choice, everything else fell into place. Sure, the road was hard and there were moments when I felt completely lost, but every struggle, every setback, only made me stronger. I knew that no matter what happened next, I had already proven to myself that I could do it. That's the real lesson here, believing in yourself, no matter what others think or say. There's always going to be someone who doubts you, someone who thinks you're not cut out for it. But at the end of the day, their opinion doesn't matter. What matters is that you keep pushing forward even when it seems impossible. What matters is that you refuse to give up on your dreams even when everyone else is ready to write you off. I've learned more than just business skills over the past 6 months. I've learned resilience. I've learned that success isn't handed to you. It's earned through hard work, determination, and an unwavering belief that you can make it. And while the money, the deals, and the accolades are great, they're not the things that will keep me going. It's the knowledge that I took a leap and it paid off. It's the fact that I refused to let fear hold me back. As I looked around at my friends that night, I realized something else too. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It wasn't about showing them I could succeed when they thought I couldn't. It was about proving it to myself, about knowing that I could be more than just the guy who followed the script. I could be the guy who took control of his own destiny. We laughed, we reminisced, and we talked about what the future held. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about life, the journey we each were on, and the paths we chose to follow. And as the night went on, I could feel the weight of the past 6 months lifting from my shoulders. I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked into that office 6 months ago. I had changed, I had grown, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe my business will keep growing, maybe it won't. But I know this. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid to take risks, to chase my dreams, or to fail. Because I've learned that failure isn't the end. It's just another step on the path to success. So, to anyone out there who's thinking about quitting their job to follow their dreams, to anyone who's scared to take that leap, this is for you. Do it. Bet on yourself. You don't need anyone's permission. You just need to believe that you can make it. And trust me, when you do, you'll look back and realize that the best decision you ever made was the one where you took a chance on yourself.